Hi students, today I have something really important to talk to you about. Today I want to talk to you about the Black Lives Matter movement and some things that are going on in the news today. So many of us have heard and even studied the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was during the 1950s and 1960s in our country when people were getting together and protesting and speaking out and trying to fight for the equal rights of all people in our country and to end police brutality. This is still happening today, but the name of the movement has shifted from the civil rights movement to the Black Lives Matter movement. It's unfortunate that although many years have passed and many people have even died in the fight to end police brutality and to get equal rights and justice, this is still happening today. So if you're watching the news or if you're even outside on the street and you're seeing signs like Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace, these are things that are happening today. And I want to make a connection. I want to work with you to make a connection between the civil rights movement, which is something you've studied before, to what's happening right now in the Black Lives Matter movement. We're going to do a little study about the similarities and differences of the two movements, and I'm going to read for you a book, Let the Children March. We have read this book in class already, and now it is so relevant. So let's talk. What do you know about the Black Lives Matter movement? What do you want to know about the Black Lives Matter movement? Well, I wish I was there with all of you today and in the weeks to come to go over this, but if you have any questions about it, you could always message me. I would love to talk to you about this. It's so important. So let's talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. As you know, science has shown that when students make connections to things that they already know, it's easier for them to understand and it becomes more important. So let's talk about what you know. You know about the civil rights movement. You know that the civil rights movement had people like Rosa Parks, Ruby Bridges, Martin Luther King. Did you know that it was in the 1950s and the 1960s? And that in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, so this became law. So remember, when Rosa Parks decided that she wouldn't give up her seat, the reason they were able to arrest her was because it was actually the law that she had to move. So they changed that law. And those laws changed in 1964. So 1964, let's see. To give you an idea about how old people were, if you lived in 1964, my mom was born in 1959. So if my mom was born in 1959, she was about 5 years old when the Civil Rights Act passed. So that's about how long ago it was. So maybe your grandparents were alive during 1964. So it wasn't even that long ago. Now, Black Lives Matter movement. This was a movement in the 2000s and right now in 2020. What do they have in common? The movement is to end police brutality. So you've seen the pictures from the civil rights movement of police doing really awful things to African American people and protesters. To stop that, it's called ending police brutality. And both movements want fair treatment for people of color. People are still fighting for this today. So we're going to make connections between the civil rights movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. That's happening right now. Let's talk about those people. So in history, you'll have a person that you learn about, an action that they did, and a result. Now, today I've just chosen a few leaders because I know you've heard about these people before. There are many people in the civil rights movement who did important and meaningful work, and I encourage you to go and research more. But I just chose 3 that I believe all of us know about so that we can make a connection and move forward. So Ruby Bridges is an important person. What was the action that she did? She was the little girl who was the first student to integrate schools. So do you remember before the Civil Rights Act, students of color and white students went to different schools? Well, there had to be one student to be the first to go into an integrated school, and that was Ruby Bridges. So the result was schools being integrated. So we have segregated, which is separate, and integrated together. Like, remember intersecting lines that we learned about in math today? Intersecting, integrated. Integrated schools, segregated schools. Ruby Bridges was the first to integrate schools. Rosa Parks. So what was her action? She refused to move. The law was segregated in public spaces. So there was an area for people of color on a bus, and there was an area for white people on a bus. She was actually sitting in the area for people of color. She was sitting there, and a white man asked her to move. But she didn't. She said no. She said, "This is my spot, and no, I'm not moving." But unfortunately, the bus driver pulled over, and she was arrested for that. So her action was refusing to move. She was standing strong for her rights. And what was the result? She was arrested. She was arrested for that, but it led to a boycott, and it led to the integration of public spaces. Another person we know about, Martin Luther King Jr. Now I want you to think of the action. What was the action that he was doing? He was making speeches. He was an organizer. He was talking to the people. He was empowering the people. And the result, he encouraged peaceful protests all around the country. Okay. Let the children march. I'm hoping you're remembering this book because we did read it before, and now it is so relevant. Let the children march. 1963, Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't play on the same playground as the white kids. I couldn't go to their schools. I couldn't drink from their water fountains. There were so many things I couldn't do. One warm spring night, my family went to church. We weren't there to have regular services. We were there to hear Dr. King speak. We were there to plan. He wanted to raise an army of peaceful protesters to fight for freedom. His brown eyes flashing fire and love. Dr. King told us the time had come to march. If I march, Mom said, I'll lose my job. Sure enough. I can't march, Daddy said. I got a family to feed. The weight of the world rested on our parents' shoulders, but this burden, this time, did not have to be theirs to bear. I don't have a boss to fear, my brother said, or a job to lose. We can march this time. We'll be Dr. King's army, I said. I'll be fine, Daddy, I promised. Don't worry, Mama. Dr. King didn't like children being put in harm's way. He was a daddy too, after all. But he said that though we were young, we were not too young to want our freedom. Let the children march. They will lead the way. On May 2nd, a sunny Thursday, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, we all met at the church, dressed in our best, feet ready. In a silence so loud that all I could hear was my racing heart, we began to walk. Hand in hand, we marched, so frightened, yet certain of what was right for freedom. The path may be long and troubled, but I'm gonna walk on. So students, during the Black Lives Matter movement, right now, people are marching. People are planning and getting out there, and they are making movements so that people can be treated with dignity to end police brutality. This is happening right now. Would I be hurt? Would we be heard? Would it all be worth it in the end? I wanted to run from the angry faces in the crowd, run from danger, run from fear. Boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, on we marched, we marched, we marched. Hate dodged my heels all that day, its yellow teeth sharp, but courage walked by my side and kept me going. Dispersed or you'll be jailed, the police shouted the first day. Dispersed or you'll get wet, the police shouted the second day. Disperse or we'll release the dogs, the police shouted the third day. We did not disperse. We kept on marching. We wouldn't stop until things started to change. So when people say things like police brutality, this is an example. Police spraying people with water, police putting dogs to attack people. Brutality comes from the word brutal, which is violent. Hundreds of us went to jail on the first day, and even more on the second. My turn wasn't until the third day. Students, this is happening right now with the movement that's happening right now. People are going out on the streets to march peacefully for justice, to end police brutality, for the dignified treatment of all people, and they are being put in jail. That night, crowded into a cell too small for even half the kids, we sang, "We shall overcome, we shall overcome." I was still in jail, but we heard that the next day and the next, more kids marched. The water hose they used on us to sting us could not stop our fierce tide. Turn the other cheek, we'd been taught. Show love where there is hate. The world watched as hate bruised us, but for 7 days we walked only in love. The jail swelled to bursting, and even President Kennedy took notice. Daddy said the president received letters and calls about us from all over the world. Our march would become a memory, a small part of a larger story, but we had been heard, and the seeds of revolution were sown. So students, these are real pictures of police brutality that were happening. Real pictures of kids and people marching. This really happened. So students, I hope that when you're hearing these things in the news and you're seeing pictures and maybe you're even seeing people marching, ask your parents. Ask your parents what's going on and why. Do research with your parents. Research the news and see why are people marching, why are people protesting, why are people making speeches right now? And I hope you make the connection so that people can be treated with dignity and get justice right now.